The Galactic Academy of Valuri's Prime had seen every species imaginable walk through its crystalline gates: seven-limbed Karathi with their photosynthetic skin, the gas-breathing Melvari who floated through corridors in sealed pressure suits, the ancient and stone-slow Duroks who enrolled for decades at a time. It had never, in 400 years of operation, enrolled a human. Until Mara Ellison showed up on a Tuesday. She was small. That was the first thing Kale Vera noticed from across the orientation chamber, small even by human standards, from what little he'd read about the species. Dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, a second-hand academy uniform already scuffed at the knees, and eyes the color of old bark that moved slowly and carefully across every face in the room. Not nervous eyes. Calculating ones. Kale's homeroom coordinator, a towering Zephrid named Professor Soli, introduced her in the clipped, efficient tone he used for all new students. Mara Ellison. Exchange Program. Origin, Earth, Sol System. Designation, Deathworld, Class 7. That was when the room changed. A Class 7 Deathworld. Kale had studied xenobiology long enough to know what that meant. Crushing gravity. Atmospheric toxins. Extreme thermal variance. Active megafauna. Microbial warfare so relentless that most species would dissolve into their component proteins within minutes of landing. Humans had not merely survived on Earth. They had won against every geological catastrophe, every ice age, every pathogen and predator the planet could produce over 4 billion years. And now one of them was going to sit next to him in advanced exobiological chemistry. He watched her walk to an empty seat. She moved quietly. No wasted motion. The other students gave her a wide berth, not out of hostility, exactly. More like instinctive caution. The same way smaller animals moved around the enclosures of apex predators even when the cage was clearly locked. The first 3 weeks were uneventful. Mara did her coursework. She ate her meals alone, though not unhappily. She answered questions in class with a directness that made some professors blink. Humans, Kale learned, had little patience for the elaborate academic politeness most species use to pad their responses. When Professor Soli asked her to theorize on pathogen adaptation models, she simply said, "You'd need to look at the host kill rate versus mutation window. If it kills too fast, it doesn't spread. Earth pathogens figured that out a long time ago. So did we." She said we like she was talking about a war. Kale found himself gravitating toward her during lab sessions. He told himself it was professional curiosity. In truth, he had never met anything he couldn't quite read before, and it bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "You don't seem afraid of anything," he said one afternoon, while they were both cataloging spore samples from the Valuri's wetlands. Mara didn't look up from her microscope. "Should I be?" Most students from lower threat biospheres are cautious. Here. The social dynamics alone? "I grew up in a place where the spiders are the size of your fist and can kill you in 4 minutes, she said. Social dynamics are fine. He didn't have a response to that. The incident happened in the 7th week. It was Kale who saw it start. He was crossing the eastern courtyard when he heard the sound, not a scream exactly. More like a sharp, cut-off noise that his threat recognition centers processed before his conscious mind did. He turned. 3 Karathi upperclassmen had cornered a younger Melvari student against the courtyard wall. The Melvari, barely first year, pressure suit fogged with distress, was trying to shrink into the stone. The Karathi were not touching him. They were just close, their 7 limbs spread wide, blocking every exit, saying something in their clicking dialect that the translation nodes turned into smooth but clearly menacing syllables. "Leak your filter just a little. Just to see. No one will notice." Kale started forward. He was already calculating odds. 3 Karathi, all larger than him, probably not a situation he wanted to escalate alone. Mara stepped out of a side corridor like she had simply been passing through. She stopped. She looked at the 3 Karathi. She looked at the Melvari. Her face was nothing. Blank in a way that took Kale a moment to identify, because he had seen that expression before. In nature documentaries. On predators, right before they moved. "Hey," she said. One word. Flat. No inflection. No anger, no fear, no social negotiation. All three Karathi turned. They were twice her height. Their sensory arrays, the cluster of organs that processed threat signals, flared automatically, reading her. Whatever they expected to find, the data that came back must have been confusing, because for a long moment none of them moved. Mara took one step forward. Just one. Unhurried. Like she was crossing a room to pick up something she'd dropped. But her posture had changed in a way that was hard to name, spine perfectly straight, shoulders settled, chin level. Weight distributed. Every inch of her suddenly occupied in a way it hadn't been a moment ago. "Walk away," she said. The largest Karathi made a sound that translated as laughter. It spread its limbs wider, a dominance display so universal that every species in the courtyard instinctively leaned back. "Little soft skin from the dirt world. You have no authority here. You are not even." It stopped. Because Mara had smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. Kale had read, somewhere, an anthropological note about human facial expressions, that the baring of teeth had originally been a threat display, co-opted over millennia into social bonding. But sometimes, under the right circumstances, the original meaning leaked back through. This was one of those times. "I don't need authority," she said. "I need you to understand that I'm not negotiating. And I'm not afraid of you. And those two things together are a problem for you that has nothing to do with rules." She took a second step. The Karathi held their ground for another 3 seconds. Kale counted. Their sensory arrays were working overtime now, reading pheromone output, muscle tension, pupil dilation, all the biological signals that species use to assess threat. He could almost see the data processing. What they were getting back from Mara was, apparently, deeply alarming. The largest one stepped back. Then the others. They made sounds that translated as, "This isn't worth the trouble." They left. Not running, their pride wouldn't allow that, but quickly. Mara watched them go. Then she turned to the Melvari student, and her face changed entirely. The blankness was gone. She crouched to his level, voice dropping gentle. "Hey. You okay? Is your suit intact?" The Melvari made a small, trembling confirmation sound. "Good. Come on. I'll walk you to the medical wing anyway, just to check." Later, Kale found her sitting on the steps outside the biology building, eating what appeared to be something from a sealed container labeled hot sauce, "Do not share." "That was impressive," he said. Mara shrugged. They were bullies. Bullies read threat. It's the same everywhere. You weren't afraid of them? She looked genuinely puzzled for a moment. Then something shifted in her expression, not dismissal, but something older. Like she was remembering a different scale of measurement. "Kale. My planet tried to kill me every day for 18 years. Bacteria. Ultraviolet radiation. Apex predators. Climate. Other humans, on occasion." She looked back at her food. 3 students who've never left a Class 2 biosphere don't really move the needle. Kale sat down beside her. He was quiet for a moment, processing. "Is that what it's like?" he finally asked. "Being from there?" Mara considered the question seriously, which he was coming to understand was simply how she approached everything. "We don't think of it as surviving," she said at last. "We just think of it as Tuesday." She offered him the container. He looked at the label. Declined. She laughed, a real laugh, unexpected and bright, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she technically was, a teenager, far from home, in an unfamiliar place. But only for a moment. Then she straightened, and her eyes moved across the courtyard with that slow, careful, measuring quality he'd noticed on her very first day. And Cale Vera, who had studied xenobiology for 6 years and thought he understood the distribution of dangerous things in the galaxy, understood something new. The most dangerous thing the universe had ever produced had not built its danger from size, or venom, or numbers. It had built it from 4 billion years of never, not once, learning how to give up. Mara Ellison finished her lunch. The Academy of Valuri's Prime went on around her, vast and ancient and very, very unaware of what it had let through its gates. Cale decided he was glad she was on his side. Probably.